Oh, come on. Good morning, everybody. I'm Chris Anibus. My husband Don and I are proud to be chosen to host this event today through Organic Valley. We thank you for choosing us. Don and I, Don's been farming his whole life. He took over the farm from his father, and in 2017, we built this new facility and moved our animals down here to farm. We've been certified organic since 2001 with Organic Valley and are happy with Organic Valley and continue to stay there. Once Don, we told him we're doing that as soon as this is over, so we're leaving. So anyway, it's an honor to have been chosen to host this today, and we welcome everybody again to our farm. Don is sitting there. We have 3 children. My oldest son Tyler and his wife Kelly have 5 kids: Austin, Hallie, Clara, Taylor, and Lily. My daughter Kelsey has 3 daughters: Victoria, Charlotte, and Izzy. And my youngest son Jacob is engaged to be married to his fiancee Kenzie. So again, thank you everybody for coming, and now I'm going to turn it over to Bob Kirchhoff, the CEO of Organic Valley. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, what a great day. The weather's a blessing today, but also being here is a blessing. You know, I've been to a lot of our membership farms over my years, and this is one that typifies, I think, who we are. You guys have been part of our co-op for over 20 years, and this is truly what we are, is a family business, and family farming is so important to all of us. And when I look at your 8 grandkids, 7, by the way, which are granddaughters, which is really cool, by the way, it's so much fun to see the future, and the t-shirts that they've got, and the hats that they're wearing, and the smiles actually are the best thing. So again, we appreciate your family so much and being part of our family. And like I said, I think you represent very much the core of who we are. And again, thank you for being here and hosting our event. You know, I think the other thing to talk about a little bit is, you know, our co-op was rooted in Wisconsin. You know, now we have over 1,700 farmers in 34 states, but this is really our home base. And it's fun to be here also in the area where we really grew from. You know, we've got over 400 dairy farmers in Wisconsin still, and that battle to sustain small organic family farms here in our home state in particular is just of utmost importance. And we're so proud of what you've done here and what we've been able to do together to not only maintain and sustain this operation, but looking at a beautiful new parlor, looking at the generations to come, and the great things that we have to achieve together. So I'm just so excited about all of that. And then, of course, you know, today, about a project that's so important to all of us and what can bring to all of our members throughout the countryside will really be exciting to watch and come to fruition. This is the first time we've ever hosted the Secretary of Agriculture, and it's great to have him here today and the efforts to be here. And I know he's got a lot to share with us about that. And I want to say that, you know, our membership and who we are of co-op, we've always been champions of regenerative farming. We've always been climate champions, and we hope that programs like this continue to propel us in those areas where not only our membership succeeds, which is the most important thing, and sustains for the long-term future, but also too where hopefully consumers can see us for who we are and all the good work we do and what we represent, from the good food we produce to how we produce it. And again, that's one of the most prideful things we have as people that work within the co-op, is not only who we are, but how we do things. And I think what we're talking about today leads to many, many more good things about how we've always done them and how we can continue to advance them. So for that, I'm grateful and excited. And I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Tom.
Well, thanks very, very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I probably should first of all say that I'm a customer. Yeah. You know, I was just thinking here as Bob was talking. The first time I purchased your half and half, you know, I read that it would be good for a period of time, and you know, it was amazing how long it remained fresh. It was so impressed me, that we've been purchasing Organic Valley ever since. Your butter, your half and half. When my wife's not around, I get whole cream, chocolate milk, some. But we are big fans, and we're certainly big fans of co-ops, and we really appreciate the opportunity to be here today. But I want to thank Don and Chris for the willingness to open up your place. It's not an easy thing to basically invite folks from out of town to come, and I really appreciate your grandkids being here. And kids, let me tell you something: when you get bored, you can leave. You know, you can go out and have a good time. But really, that's the reason we're here, is these young people. And I think farmers and ranchers and producers understand and appreciate that a changing climate has really created some challenges. You all are confronting these challenges across the United States. In some cases, it's mega droughts. In some cases, it's incredible fires. In some cases, it's derechos. In some cases, it's floods. The reality is you're dealing with this every single day. And I think it's fair to say that the folks that are here today that represent the best in American agriculture, that you all see yourselves as stewards of the land and water, and that you understand your responsibilities as stewards. And it really is about making sure that you are in a position to be able to provide the next generation of farmers the opportunity to do what you love to do. And frankly, there's a growing market demand for sustainably produced food products, not just here in the United States, but around the world. The reality is that the export market, which is incredibly important to American agriculture, is more and more demanding to know what sustainable practices are in place in terms of what they purchase. And we at USDA want to be a partner, and we see these trends taking place. We know that farmers are dealing with a variety of challenges, and so we went to farmers and we went to food companies and we said, how could we help? How could we accelerate what's already happening down on the farm? How can we encourage more of it, and how can we put a value on it so that farmers have a better chance of making a bottom line that allows them to survive and thrive? And farmers came back with a very clear message to us. They said, trust us. Just simply trust us. If you're going to put a program together, make sure it's voluntary, that nobody's mandated to participate, that everybody can decide for themselves. Make sure that you provide incentives. Encourage us to look at new ways, recognizing that those new ways may require some expense. Help us with those expenses. If you could help us educate the market and create new market opportunities so that we get a higher value, we'd like that as well. And make sure that you encourage partnerships, because we can't do this alone. We have to be in a position to work with companies and universities that will allow us to verify and measure and quantify the results of the good stewardship that we have. So we put a program together with those values and those structures in place, and then we waited. And frankly, I think it's fair to say that most of us at USDA were hopeful that the $1 billion that we originally identified from the Commodity Credit Corporation would be, we wouldn't be faced with a circumstance where we couldn't allocate all of it. We were hopeful we'd get 50, 75 applications from across the country. We're hopeful that most commodities would want to weigh in. Boy, we got 1,050 applications. We got 450 applications for the large grant program, the program that's $5 to $100 million, and then we got 600 applications for the smaller grant program that involves grants of $250,000 to $5 million. We were hopeful that there would be partnerships, the amazing set of partnerships. Major conservation and environmental groups working with major farm groups working with food companies working with retailers working with processors, companies working with energy, companies working with transportation companies. It's an amazing array of partners that have been identified in these applications. We put 70 people at USDA to work to take a look at these 1,050 applications we got that requested over $20 billion. And they came back and said, look, we've got a lot of really good applications, but $1 billion isn't going to be enough. Is there any way that we can increase the commitment? So we looked at the Commodity Credit Corporation. We made sure that we had sufficient resources to do what we need to do for Farm Bill programs in the first quarter of this year, or the fiscal year, which starts October 1st, no problem. We had some additional resources for nutrition programs, no problem. We had money left over in reserve, and we still had another $2.5 billion that we could put into this program. So basically, we have now a $3.5 billion initiative. And what we're announcing, and what we announced this week, was basically 70 projects in the larger grant pool, allocating about $2.8 billion to those 70 projects. All 50 states, producers in all 50 states are going to participate. It's not just dairy, and it's not just the commodity crops. It's across the board. It's specialty crops. It's hemp. It's a wide variety of commodities. It's even coffee being produced down in Puerto Rico. All 50 states, we expect and anticipate over 50,000 farmers are going to participate in this effort. It will impact probably somewhere between 20 and 25 million acres of land across the United States with climate-smart practices. We think that more than 100 market opportunities are going to be created from this initiative. And we are hopeful that by the time it's all said and done, that roughly 50 million metric tons of greenhouse gas or CO2 equivalent is either prevented or eliminated or diminished or stored. It's a tremendous opportunity for American agriculture to not only improve the bottom line, not only improve conditions on the planet, but also put us in a position where internationally we are able to say to the rest of the world, follow us. We're leading, follow us. And now this is combined with the work that we're doing with our Food System Transformation Act efforts. Most recently, we announced a $300 million commitment to organic, helping folks transition if they wish to become organic producers, providing resources for mentoring and technical assistance, reducing the cost of conservation and risk management that's associated with that, and helping to figure out, working with folks like Organic Valley, how do we create the market, how do we better balance the supply and demand that exists in the country today. So we're excited about that opportunity. We're excited about generating new opportunities for local and regional purchasing of food. We're using our procurement dollars at USDA more effectively to make sure we give farmers at the local level a chance to participate in those kinds of contracts and opportunities. So there's a lot going on. We're really excited about what's going on. We know that there are still lots of challenges out there. We're trying to deal with those as well. We dodged a very, 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 very large bullet last night when the railroads and the unions agreed to a tentative agreement. So we're not going to have a rail strike. If we'd had a rail strike, we would have had a very chaotic circumstance. So this is certainly good news, and certainly appreciate the railroads and unions working it out. It did take a few calls from the president at times, which took place last night to close the deal. So excited about this opportunity, excited about the partnerships that are being developed, and we've got 3 projects that are sort of based, if you will. Wisconsin, by the way, I think at the end of the day, my records are right. I think Wisconsin's going to have 16 projects that producers in Wisconsin can participate in. We're going to talk about several of them here today, but there are a number of other projects that Wisconsin producers can participate in. Minnesota, I think, has 17 or so projects. So the Midwest is very much engaged and involved in a lot of these activities, and I think we're going to see a lot of good work being done. So what's going to happen now, I think, is I'm going to turn the microphone over to the 3 folks who are with me today, and they're going to talk a little bit about their projects. So I think we're going to start with Organic Valley, if that's okay, and then we'll have just a little Q&A, and then open it up for some questions from the folks out in the audience.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Hello, y'all. My name is Nicole Rakovich. I'm the Director of Sustainability at Organic Valley, and I'll tell you an overview of our project. So Bob did a little intro and background on who Organic Valley is, but we are a nationwide marketing cooperative of nearly 1,800 farms nationwide. The two major commodities we market are dairy and eggs. And earlier this year, we launched a carbon insetting pilot program. And this is our major strategy for us to reduce our on-farm emissions and reach our existing carbon neutrality goal. So this grant funding is going to provide the resources we need to scale that program from a one-year pilot to a full multi-year program. So the funding from USDA, and in collaboration with more than 20 partners, we will work towards carbon neutrality without the use of carbon offsets. And we do have some of our partners here today. We have the Savannah Institute, we have UW Wisconsin at Madison, and we have Annie's General Mills. So thank you all for being our partners. Our program focuses not on carbon offsets, but on carbon insets. So an inset is when a company invests in its own supply chain, not outside of it. Through carbon insetting, we will increase the resiliency and long-term profitability of our supply chain and the communities we are part of. Organic Valley farmer members will be incentivized to implement new climate-smart farming practices that either reduce emissions at the farm level or sequester carbon right there on their farms. Farmer incentives will be in the form of practice planning and design, as well as carbon outcome payments based on the expected ton of carbon reduced or sequestered. We expect that we'll deliver over $20 million in direct farmer financial benefits over the course of our 5-year project. As far as the projects go themselves, our goal is to implement 1,200 new practices across our membership on 500 farms. The total carbon abatement value that we're estimating is 65,000 metric tons. The practices we're focusing on are improvements to grazing, pasture and croplands, manure management, feed supplements, agroforestry, and solar energy. So these are carbon insets, which means the resulting carbon reductions and removals are going to stay with the farmer and in our supply chain with our products and our brand. Thus, we'll be lowering the carbon footprint of our branded products on the retail shelf and creating new market opportunities for climate-smart dairy and eggs. Perhaps unique to our project, a portion of the carbon insets will be shared with participating ingredient supply chain partners and applied to their products and climate goals. After practices are implemented, we're going to monitor and validate the carbon over time by measuring both the below ground carbon, the soil carbon, and then the above ground carbon in woody biomass. Our program as a whole will be validated by SustainCert's Value Chain Intervention Program for Scope 3 emissions. True to our mission, this project brings increased resources to small family farms. The majority of our participating farms meet the definition of USDA historically underserved farmer or rancher. So we're super excited about that. And lastly, I'll just say we're honored to be part of this historic grant. As America's low-carbon dairy and some of the original organic pioneers, we're excited to drive our footprint even lower and work towards a carbon-neutral supply chain, thereby being part of the climate solution.
Hello, I'm Tim Trotter, Executive Director, or CEO of Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative. Our cooperative is only 10 years old, so when it comes to farm cooperatives, Mr. Secretary, we're very young. But even though we're very young, we represent, basically, we're the third largest co-op by volume milk in the nation. We represent the private processors in the federal order, so if you think about AgriPure, Saputo, Valley Queen, you just go throughout the Midwest, all those private processors farms, we represent them in the federal order. one of the unique things about what we did over 6 years ago is we really were really driven by sustainability. And of course, any farmers are dealing with not only with local regulations, there's water quality issues. So we're really working with farms. How do you deal with those local issues? But as we developed the program, we realized it's a sustainability initiative. So what we did is Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative, along with the Dairy Business Association and Nature Conservancy, we formed Farmers for Sustainable Food. And that's kind of our branch that we're doing a lot of work with this climate smart funding. We have approximately 6 farmer-led projects that are really farmer-centric. Farmers are, sharing data. They're trying new practices. They're innovating. And what's really important is the scorecards that they're developing. They're using tools like Field to Market Field Print Calculator, so they have that balance sheet of environmental impacts. So now what these farmers are doing is they're getting really excited, very similar to what has been said here about the other projects, is farmers are really encouraged, and I think they're excited about doing things. But what's really important is really linking to the marketplace. And one thing we see with the 32 processors that we work with, all of them are asking for data. Their customers are asking for information. So we want to make sure farmers have a seat at the table and that they were able to take a look at their data and being able to leverage that for better outcomes for their farms. But also it's the mentorship that happens between farms. There's that competition that all farmers have. If I could find a good way to do it better, your neighbor's going to try to one-up you. And we're seeing that within sustainability. And we're really excited that the administration took this courageous move and very thoughtful move to go in the climate area, because the timing is perfect. Because a lot of farmers, they're willing to do the work, they're willing to make the investment, but they want to make sure at the end of the day that there's something in it, not only for their farms, but their next generations. Because again, we want resilient farms. We want them to be able to really innovate rather than be regulated. And a lot of the things I wanted to say, you've already covered, Mr. Secretary, because it's all about farmers and how do we really empower farmers to do better things. And there's in Wisconsin, we're so lucky, dairy in Wisconsin, we have the support systems that a lot of other states don't have. But that also gives us a one-up, because we have a lot of resources when it comes to the climate conversation, a climate journey. There's a lot of companies that could be very helpful. So our application is really working with all commodities, and actually U.S. Beet Sugar is one of our major partners, because let's face it, dairy and sugar go in a lot of products together, and a lot of the same customers we're working with. So we decided to be inclusive rather than exclusive to just dairy. So our application actually, although it's Edge Dairy Farmer Cooperative, it's really a holistic application. And again, we just want to be able to have an onboarding process. It's easy to get an early adopter involved in sustainability, but how do we bring the mass along? How do we give people an on-ramp to the whole journey of sustainability? And that's going to come with incentives and offerings. So that's essentially what we want to do. We're excited to be a part of this. We want to thank you for your leadership. This is, I don't want to say how old I am, but when it comes to agriculture, this is probably one of the most innovative things that's ever happened within USDA, and I want to commend you and President Biden for doing this. Thank you.
So my name's Matt Woods. I'm with the DeLong Company. Our company is the largest exporter of containerized agricultural products. We operate about 40 locations across 11 states, primarily country grain elevators. So our program that we have proposed is pretty straightforward. What we're going to be doing is offering per acre direct incentives for farmers that enroll in our program that employ climate smart practices on those acres. So it's just going to cover things like cover crops, nutrient management programs, no-till, and windbreak establishments. And from those acres that they enroll, we're going to be recording on-farm data, and we're going to be using the Corteva's granular system and the USDA's carbon management evaluation tool to kind of get a gauge for the environmental impact that those practices are going to have. So we'll be able to record that throughout the program. On the end user side of things, we're going to be creating like a climate smart brand for that these commodities are going to be marketed to. and one of the primary commodities that we export are soybeans that go to China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia. And so we're going to be creating a brand for these and creating awareness about the brand for these exporters as well. So it'll be more internationally recognized. And yeah, so those are that is kind of like the basics of our program, which is pretty straightforward.
Great. So just a couple of additional points in response to what I've just heard. You know, one of the benefits from this program will be that we will, these are pilots, and so we're going to learn what works and what doesn't work. And we're very interested in the whole issue of technology and tools to manage, to report, to verify, to monitor, to certify the results. And I think from that we will learn the most efficient way to assist businesses and farmers to be able to accurately measure and verify the results. Also, what was exciting about these applications is the leverage opportunity. While we're putting in $2.8 billion, it's been matched almost to about 50%, so about another $1.4 billion of additional investment. So this is a really massive effort here over the next 3 to 5 years. And as information is shared, we're going to bring the applicants together periodically so that everyone will sit down and talk to each other about their projects and share best practices, lessons learned, and we will then be able to report back to the agricultural community and the public at large periodically on the success of what we're learning from this effort. So it's going to be quite transparent, which is great. So let me ask a couple of questions, and then I'd like to open it up for folks who may have a question or comment about all of this. And let me start with our hosts here, Organic Valley. This notion of carbon insetting, is this something that that you all sort of developed, or is it something that you learned from someone else? Because as you know, oftentimes it is really about carbon credits and somebody else basically outside of your supply chain being involved. Talk to me a little bit about the evolution of this notion of carbon insetting.
Well, I would say it is an innovative idea, but there are others doing it. So maybe some of the original pioneers are Alter Eco Chocolate. They're doing carbon insetting in their chocolate supply chain. But essentially, we navigated towards this strategy because we want to reach our climate goal and reduce the footprint of our products. And when you sell a carbon offset, that carbon benefit leaves the farm and goes to some other supply chain. So we had to come up with a mechanism for our farmers to choose us, Organic Valley, as their carbon market, so that we could keep that carbon with our products.
And that responds to some concerns that folks often have about all of this. That's great. You know, one of the things that struck me about your application was that you were also involving some sort of non-traditional partners, conservation districts, NGOs, universities. Talk a little bit about the partnerships that you have.
Yes, so we have about 20 different partners, and their main role is to work one-on-one with our farmer members for technical assistance. So really to develop the plans right there on the farm. So an example would be Savannah Institute will work with our farmers to develop agroforestry plans, such as silvopasture, which would be planting trees in and amongst your pasture. So they'll be right there on the farm working one-on-one to develop the plans. And so we have TSPs identified nationwide for the different climate smart farming practices.
You know, Tim, this notion of technical assistance is pretty important to all these programs. And I noticed that some of the partners that you all have are also a little bit unusual. You've got a technical college or community college that's involved. You've got a watershed alliance. Talk to me a little bit about why those folks are important to what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, if you're going to replicate this, you've got to have local resources. You've got to have people that are really a value add to the whole journey. And we really believe we have a system here in the state that is, bar none, one of the best there is. And why not empower those people to help with the whole journey? Because, again, early adopters are going to find all of this information on their own. But if you're going to go to every farm in the state of Wisconsin, you're going to have that infrastructure and that support system. And I say we've got some of the best support systems that you could ask for here in the state. So why not tap into that resource? Again, it's just leveraging our assets all together to, really drive net farm income and sustainability and in the climate.
Matt, you're working with railroads and energy companies. How do they fit into all this?
Yeah, so for the energy companies, they're always looking for new ways to source sustainable products and create cleaner energy, and a lot of that will, especially for the ethanol companies that we're working with, are going to start at the farm gate. And so being able to help provide them with more sustainable and more sustainable commodities will go a long way with that, and we'll be able to also provide the quantification for like what is actually the effects that these practices are actually having at the farm gate as well. So we'll be able to show those effects. And for the railroads, they're going to be the primary transporters of a lot of these commodities, and helping get the brand through the supply chain so it's more widely known. Will also kind of help out with the branding as well.
You mentioned sustainable fuels. One of the interesting opportunities, I think, is in sustainable aviation fuel. And the recent Inflation Reduction Act includes a lot of encouragement and incentives for the development of that fuel. So there's an opportunity not only to tie that opportunity with this opportunity to create new revenue streams for farmers. And one of the beauties of this, someone asked me, I was at Penn State, which is your alma mater, Matt, yesterday, and somebody said, well, this is great. It's you'll be doing this for a couple of years, and then what? The Inflation Reduction Act contains an historic amount of investment in conservation, the largest single investment in conservation I think we've seen maybe ever, but for sure since the Dust Bowl. And this vehicle, this resource is going to allow us, once we learn best practices, to be able to permanently continue the resourcing of those best practices. So it's not a situation where this is one and done. This is basically an opportunity to learn what works and then use that permanent funding source to make sure that it's constantly supported. So that's what's exciting about this opportunity. All right, so some of these projects are for a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years. So I want you to think about this for just a second. All these young folks are going to be a little bit older when I want you to think about the answer to this question. But let's assume that 5 years from now, Don and Chris invite us back to the place. I'm not secretary, so I'll have to get myself here. I won't have help. But I'm back here, and we're here at this panel conversation, and the question is, okay, what happened? What do you think 5 years from now things are going to look like by virtue of what you all are investing in?
We're going to see solar energy systems on farm. We're going to see tree plantings. We're going to see increased use of diverse cover crops, increased intensity of grazing. We're going to see use of feed supplements to reduce enteric emissions, which we know are, at least half the carbon footprint of a dairy farm. So we're going to see a lot of innovation and action on farm. And these farms are going to be more resilient and profitable over the long term, right? That solar energy system is going to pay itself off in a few years, and then there'll be, free or low cost solar energy after that.
Okay. Tim, 5 years from now, where are we?
Well, I think kind of piggybacking off of that, I think what we're going to see is a lot more younger farmers staying on the farm. Again, we got to have certainty for agriculture, and we've come off some really difficult years, and how do we get the next generation in the marketplace? Well, it's knowing that we have a market for our products and a market that's going to reward them for hard work and innovation. So I think that's what we'll see 5 years from now, because we know what the average age of a farmer is. That's kind of scary. We need the next generation in here now, but they need that certainty, and I think this program will help us get there.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, piggybacking off that as well, I think with the more younger generation of farmers coming in, I think that we'll see, especially with a lot of these programs going on, we'll see a lot more sustainable practices on the farms as well, and they'll be looking for more ways to do more and help contribute to the climate solution. So I think that's we'll be seeing more of that down the road in 5 years.
Okay, let's open it up to questions from folks in the audience, and if there aren't any, I can continue to ask a whole series of questions. I got a whole lot of questions I can ask, but I want to make sure we give people a chance. It just takes one brave soul to get the conversation started. Yes, sir. So I think one of the benefits of a pilot program is it gives us the opportunity to learn a little bit. I think we are in the sort of the infancy, if you will, of this issue of labeling. Right now we are, for example, you mentioned a product of the U.S. We've just recently concluded a massive survey at USDA in terms of consumers. And we asked over 4,000 consumers across the country, when you see the label product of the U.S., what do you think that means? Does it mean that everything that was done with that product was done in the U.S.? Does it mean that most of what was done, that product was done in the U.S.? Does it mean that just some of what was done in the U.S.? What does it mean, and what kind of value do you put on it, if any? And from that information, we're going to be able to determine how best to give instructions to those who want to voluntarily put that label on their product, so that they are not misrepresenting to the public what that actually means. I think that's the first step in the process, is for us to understand and appreciate consumers' expectations and understandings, and then make sure that we do our job at USDA to make sure that whatever is put on a label, in fact, is something that's verifiable, something that's accurate, that's something that doesn't misrepresent the condition of the product. And I think we're going to learn a lot from these projects about how to structure that kind of approach when it comes to climate smart. Other questions from folks here? I'm told that Wisconsin people are very talkative. At least that's what we believe down in Iowa. No questions. Okay, well, yeah. Well, I think that gets me back to the conversation about the Inflation Reduction Act. The extent to which we put, the Congress has already allocated and appropriated billions of dollars, almost $20 billion of additional support and that's on top of what's traditionally provided for conservation programs. So that is a big increase, all right, a huge increase. So that gives us the ability, once we learn what works, to be able to target and fund our conservation programs to be supportive of those activities. So that's the runway, if you will. This basically creates the opportunity to learn what works and what doesn't, what should be funded, what shouldn't be, and then we can use the EQIP, CSP, RCPP, all those programs to essentially fund and target and focus on the things that work. And that's the beauty of it. That's the great thing about this Inflation Reduction Act, is that it really does give us the stability and the predictability, Tim's point, that this is going to continue. It's not going to be a one-off kind of circumstance. And so that's terrific. Now, the challenge we're going to have in all of this is making sure that we have sufficient boots on the ground to be able to implement and work with farmers. And we're working on that. We're trying to rebuild the workforce. The department I came back to was not the department I left in terms of staffing. And so we're in the process of rebuilding that staff. It's not easy because it's kind of, our system is a bit cumbersome, and we've got to modernize it. But we are trying to figure out ways to accelerate it. We just recently announced a nutrient management opportunity where we're going to reduce the time for certifying our technical specialists who work with NRCS, so we get more boots on the ground helping people with the technical aspects of all of this. And let me ask that question of the panel. As significant as the financial resources are, how do you see the importance of the technical assistance that goes along with it? I mean, is that equally important in your view?
Yes, to the farmers for sure. Yep. Yeah, I think some farmers, don't need the technical assistance, but I think a lot of them do. Just sort of, what does that practice look like? How do you design and plan for it? How does it fit into the farm operation? And then I think even before, the farm is settled on a specific practice, maybe what is the best one, right? So our program, we have these suite of different practices, but we know they're not all going to work for each farm. So, working one-on-one with the farm to say, what's the greatest, not only carbon benefit for our farm, but, what fits in our farm operation, maybe makes it more efficient labor-wise or et cetera. So the technical assistance is key to it all, I would say, and really the starting point, right? And then after that is the funding to implement the project.
Yes, and I think the private sector is going to step up and really make sure that all farms have opportunities and on-ramps to technology. And again, no matter where it comes from, every farmer's in a different place. There's not any one farmer the same, not any one farm the same. So everyone's going to require different support and technology. So the technical support is, again, it's something that the farmer mentor, the mentor will help. What's worked, what can I replicate from what you do? I think the private sector, is really going to step up with the announcement of this program, because it's really indicating where the opportunities are.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the technical assistance is going to be very important, and I mean, just going forward, thinking about like how making sure it makes sense for each farm, that the practices that are going to be employed, because you don't want to go and just try and throw everything at them all at once. You want to make sure that it makes sense for the farm, make sure it's sense for the land and the business, and kind of getting them in the right direction is going to be very important.
I mentioned that this is a roughly $3.5 billion effort, and the first tranche of grants that we're making today or this week are going to potentially use up to $2.8 billion. So the question is, what happens with the rest of the resource? And we will be taking a look at the 600 applications that came from the small grant pool, folks who asked for $250,000 to $5 million, and we'll be making decisions on that later in the year. So there are going to be additional projects that we can announce later in the year. Now you might ask, well, why wait until later in the year? Well, to Tim's point about exports, every year the world meets at a location. It's called a COP. This is going to be COP 27. It's a United Nations effort to try to bring folks together to talk about climate. And for many, many years, and I've gone to several of these COP meetings, agriculture has been kind of an afterthought. There's a lot of conversation about utilities, a lot of conversation about construction, a lot of conversation about transportation, but not as much about agriculture. That's changing significantly. So this year, the COP meeting is in November. It's in Egypt, and there is a specific day dedicated to agriculture for the first time. And so that's an opportunity for us to talk about this project that we're talking about today. And it's also an opportunity for us to showcase that it's not just very, very large farming operations that will be involved in this, but that in fact we're also including smaller operations and including those that maybe over time have not participated in programs for one reason or another. So I'd be interested in your take in terms of the size of the operations that may be engaged in your projects. What are we talking about? Are we talking about really, really large farms? Are we talking about small farm? Who are we talking about when we talk about your projects and the producers that may be engaged?
Well, Organic Valley dairy farmers, I think our average herd size is about 76 cows on average. So small family-run farms throughout the U.S., in 34 different states.
We have a wide array of sizes of farms, anywhere from the sizes that was just mentioned, but we also have farms that have several thousand cows. But again, I think it all comes back to it's the progressive nature of the farmer that's really exciting about this, because they're all going to add value. They're all going to drive this thing, and No matter what size you are, it comes back to the mentality of the farmer, right? I mean, it's just what excites them, what really makes them drive. So regardless what size the farm is, I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, and that was within our network. The about 70% of the farms that we do work with are still considered the small family farms. We do have a wide variety of farms in the network. The vast majority of them are still considered the small family farms. We do have a decent percentage of the larger farms as well, but primarily the small family run farms.
Well, I think that's an important point because this is not just this is a program that really is designed for farms of all sizes and for all commodities. Not only is this project going to be participating in all 50 states and Puerto Rico, but it's really across virtually all the commodities. There are corn and soy projects, there are beef projects, there are pork projects, there are poultry projects, there's hemp projects, there's dairy, there's specialty crops, there are nuts, coffee, rice. So it's across the entire spectrum of crops. So it's really going to be an exciting opportunity for us in agriculture. Let me talk a little bit about the technology and the data information. How, obviously, to verify, report, and quantify, there's going to be a lot of data. So give me a little bit of better sense of how that data is going to be collected. You know, is it aggregated? Do farmers own it? What kind of concerns do you have to address when you talk about data in farming?
Well, one of our largest partners right now in our pilot projects is Field to Market Field Print Platform, which is widely used throughout all commodities. We're utilizing that because it uses national state benchmarks to kind of chart the farm's progress. But again, data drives the discussion. Data describes, really takes them forward with what decisions they want to make and where they need to improve. What's really important is in our project, we sit down with the crop consultants, they go through their report card and they understand, you know, they do some scenario planning. What if I would have done more cover crops? What if I would have done a different product mix? I mean, they can kind of do some scenario planning what they want to do next year. But again, that data is so important. And that's the thing. Farmers do a lot of great things, but we don't document it. And we're afraid to share it. So what's nice about Field to Market is, you know, it can't be used outside of the own farmer's use. It's aggregated data. But again, it's that conversation with the farmer about what the report card says and how can they advance the next year. So, but we use Field to Market, but we're open to any tools that will help because not all farmers, you know, again, all farmers are different. We need to have different methods to get that information.
Yeah, for ours, we're going to be using the two different ones, the Corteva's granular system and the USDA's carbon management evaluation tool. Both of them are extremely similar, but basically what it's going to be doing is we're going to be collecting on-farm data, stuff like crop rotations, cover crops, irrigation practices, fertilizer and manure applications, tilling practices, things like that on the farm, and it kind of runs it through the system, and then these systems they have their calculations built into them, and it'll kind of give us a number on the amount of carbon that we're going to be sequestering from these practices from each field on the farm.
Yeah, and at Organic Valley, we're going to develop our own internal data management system to model the baseline of the farm and then estimate improvements over time. And then we'll actually be going out in the field to measure that soil carbon or that above ground carbon to see if our estimates were correct and make our predictions more robust over time. And one of our really exciting partners is this company called Yardstick. So they're developing this technology to really make taking soil carbon measurements faster and more efficient. So over time, we'll be able to eliminate the need to actually pull a soil sample from the ground because they have an in situ probe that goes in the ground that uses spectral technology. So that'll really speed up that process and eliminate sending samples to the lab.
You know, some of the projects are going to involve satellite data from NASA. I mean, this is a brave new world. Yesterday, we had an opportunity to visit with the folks from Farm Journal, and one of the things that they're looking at in terms of their project is this digitization gap between folks who are currently recording a lot of information on a tablet, right? Not a tablet like a paper tablet, and those who are using more sophisticated equipment, and they're going to try to study how you can help folks move to take better advantage of the technology that exists. So, so if I'm a farmer in Wisconsin and I get the local paper, and the local paper talks about this project, and I'm interested in maybe potentially getting involved in something like this. How do I do it? Is it open? Can more farmers participate, or have you pretty much figured out who the universe of people are that will be able to participate?
Well, at Organic Valley, you can call our farmer hotline and ask for the sustainability team, and you'll get a member of my team, and we'll start working with you to scope projects. We don't have all the participants identified by any means, right? A lot of what we need to do is education and outreach. And being a cooperative, we have a really strong communication function. So we'll be going out to our regional meetings this coming fall, where we go out and meet one-on-one with our farmers in the regions where they are.
Well, in our case, you go to farmersforsustainablefood.com. We have a lot of great resources on there and an opportunity to interact with our initiative. So, we're all about bringing anybody into the tent that wants to improve.
For us, you're able to call our general line, and pretty much everybody will be able to kind of give you some details about the program and how to sign up and how to join. So that'd be the best way to do it.
If folks are interested in the other projects, the other 67 projects that aren't being highlighted today, we are going to put a website together that's going to provide some information about this program, about these programs. And it's a relatively simple website to remember. It's usda.gov/the word climate -smart-commodities. So it's usda.gov/climate-smart-commodities. And that's dash as in it, not spelling it out, but an actual dash. So it's an opportunity for you to learn more about these projects. It is really pretty amazing. I'm headed to the Twin Cities after this, and to River Falls actually, where we're going to talk to some folks who are doing a project. Tutera is doing a project, and so we're very obviously Land O'Lakes Lodge Co-op also engaged and involved in all of this, and so there's just going to be just an awful lot of activity in this space. So there's going to be a lot of talk about this, a lot of interest in it, and we're really excited about it. Anybody else got a question? Yes. Yeah.
This administration's taken a really forward look at climate challenges facing the planet. And this is one example of this partnership program, but I know there's more going on at the department. I'd love to hear how you're thinking about research, how you're thinking about just the standing conservation programs, because those are the things a lot of our farmers will use, and how you see you orientating the agency to be more responsive in that way, and what else you got going on.
Well, appreciate the question. Well, first of all, I want to emphasize the point I made before, which is the necessity of building up our staff, because in order to be able to do anything, you've got to have people that are on the ground who are well trained and educated about what we are doing, so they can share that information. We had recently had a sort of a field day, NRCS sponsored on soil health. And I think there has been a major commitment on the part of NRCS to really focus on this notion of soil health practices, some of which we've mentioned here today, that are part and parcel of improving soil health, with the understanding that as you do, you increase productivity. So I think you're going to see a continued emphasis on soil health. We recently announced an interesting program with our RCPP program, Regional Conservation Partnership Program, focused on nutrient management. And the reality is that this is going to provide $40 million to really encourage folks to understand the 4 R's, the right time and the right place and the right amount and the right source and so forth, to make sure that people are using fertilizer and inputs. We know the input costs are very high, So there are a multitude of ways that we're trying to address that. One way, which we'll be announcing here in the next month or two, is an effort to invest in U.S. made or U.S. produced fertilizer. Part of the problem that we face is with the war in Ukraine, we've basically had a disruption of the supply chain, and that disruption pointed out that we're relying on folks who we shouldn't be relying on for those kinds of important inputs. So we need to be more self-reliant. So we'll be putting resources behind projects that are underway or that are close to being underway that will allow us to produce here in the U.S. our own inputs. Having said that, we also know from research that as much as 28% of the land that is currently being fertilized probably doesn't need it, or certainly doesn't need as much of it. So to the extent that we can equip farmers with better information, the notion of precision agriculture, better information about the condition of each acre as they are making these input decisions, our hope is that we become more efficient. There's research being done at Iowa State University on corn with sensor technology that would allow you to essentially literally be able to evaluate each stock to determine what it needed, and they're consistent in their view that 30% of the corn acres are over fertilized in this country. So if we can create more domestically produced supply, and we can reduce and more efficiently use the existing supply, that should help farmers manage over time some of the input challenges that we face today. So that obviously gets you to the research, and I think one of the things that we're now learning is that we've done a great job in this country of putting resources behind healthcare research and disease and illness research. We haven't kept pace with agricultural research, and I think the pandemic encouraged us to think differently about our food and our food supply. I think we took it for granted. I think during the pandemic we had some challenges and some empty shelves, and people thought, oh my gosh, we really need to think about this. It's not a given that we're going to be able always to go to the grocery store and be able to get what we want when we want it. So I think you're going to see, I know we've asked for additional resources from Congress to put into the land-grant universities, the minority-serving institutions. And then finally, it's really building the next generation of ag leaders. These young people who are here today, we don't have to make the case to them about farming because they live it. But a lot of kids haven't had that experience. I happen to be one of them. I've said many times, if my parents from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, knew that their son was a Secretary of Agriculture, not once but twice, they would think the country had really taken a bad turn. But you don't necessarily have to be on a farm to be excited about farming. You don't necessarily have to have that experience as a young kid to want to be a farmer. But the reality is it's tough. It's tough to get in, and it's tough. We need to do a better job, and I think this climate smart effort is really a way of reaching to a younger generation and saying, hey, there's a lot of interesting, innovative, creative things going on out there in the farm. And the farms don't necessarily have to be, with all due respect to this beautiful vista here in Wisconsin, it doesn't necessarily have to be just in rural places. It can also be in urban centers, so that people do see a better connection between what they eat and how it's grown. So we're putting some resources behind urban agriculture. We're putting resources behind vertical farming. We're putting resources behind rooftop activities and community gardens as a way of getting people engaged and connected and seeing how difficult and challenging it can be, but also how exciting and innovative it can be. So that's also happening at the department. And then finally, we think that we learned from the pandemic, as efficient as our system has become, and it is incredibly efficient, which is one of the reasons why, notwithstanding what people may think about the cost of food today, we are still relatively blessed as a food secure nation, and relatively speaking to other people around the world, we pay a lot less for our food than most people do around the world as a percentage of our income. But that efficiency came at a price during the pandemic, and the price was that we frankly didn't have a resilient system. We didn't have a system that could shift quickly in the face of a significant disruption. and so that meant that farmers had to euthanize their livestock, which is an incredibly painful thing that has to happen, or they have to dump milk that they've worked hard to produce, which also happened, which was incredibly painful to watch. So what we've decided is to complement the efficient system that we have. We put in place a commitment to local and regional food systems, and the ability for farmers not only to be able to market globally on the export market, but also to be able to sell to their local school, to their local grocery store, to their local restaurant, to an institutional purchaser of food, to a farmer's market. So we've made a commitment to do that, and we've looked at ways in which we can help and assist. We announced last week the development of regional food business centers. There'll be 6 of them, at least 6 of them across the United States, and these will be places where people who want to build or want to support or want to expand a local and regional food system will be able to go to that location, and they'll get information and financial assistance and technical assistance about how to do that. And we also recognize that we needed to significantly expand production processing capacity. And you'll be seeing the first week of October a series of grants that we'll be making to expand processing in the meat and poultry area. And we have a companion program for non-meat and poultry processing that will be announced later in the year. So there's a lot going on at USDA, a lot going on. Anything else? Yes.
I'm Erin Silva. I'm a professor at UW-Madison and a state extension specialist. And I'm probably going to do what a professor typically does and make a comment and then ask a question. As you mentioned, there's...
As long as you don't grade my answer.
As working in organic for the last 15 years, there's tremendous opportunity. Their opportunities continue to grow, and what we've been seeing over the past year with the situation in Ukraine and other supply chain challenges with India really highlights the need for more domestic production. But as you mentioned, we really have a bottleneck with respect to technical assistance and boots on the ground to help farmers be able to make that transition and support them into organic management, support them into climate smart management as well. And I'm so grateful for all the investments USDA made, that you've made, that the Biden administration has made. I think it's really going to be an exciting decade moving forward to see the results of all this investment. And one of the investments that we've been able to access was through the USDA National Organic Program through their Human Capital Program. And that program, us as a university, have been able to work with industry partners and certifiers to look at developing resources and programs to build that next generation that is absolutely essential. Do you see any investment like that, where there could be partnerships between universities, technical colleges, extension, and industry? I totally agree. Students are interested. They want to know where they're coming from. They want to make a difference. They want to have an impact on their future. They're not necessarily all coming from farming backgrounds. And I think being able to interact with industry and have these partnerships is going to be vital to bring those students into agriculture, into food systems, and get that technical assistance that we need.
Well, I think there are 3 answers to that. First of all, there are regular programs, which you've alluded to, and those obviously need to continue. We need to continue to invest in them. Secondly, we as I alluded to earlier, we announced the Organic Transition Alliance effort initiative, and that contains resources for doing just exactly what you've outlined, and also for paying farmers who are organic farmers to be able to mentor folks who want to transition into that. So that's a possible opportunity. And then affiliating with minority serving institutions, because we want to broaden the net of people that we're attracting into this. We just recently announced our Next Gen initiative, which is focused on expanding scholarships and internships and fellowships at and involving USDA and USDA programs. It's a $250 million initiative, and so there's an opportunity there potentially for partnership. So I think the answer to your question is yes, we need to do that. We want to do that. And it gets back to sort of the fundamental, for me, at the end of the day, the real purpose for all of this. When I came back to the department, one of the first things that landed on my desk was an ERS. ERS puts out a chart every day. It's a really amazing little thing that they do, and I may be the first secretary that really actually, every day couldn't wait to get the chart of the day. So one of the charts that they gave, like in the first week I was there, was a chart that was a little bit distressing because it indicated that 89.6% of farms in this country don't generate the majority of income for the farm family that's farming them. So that means that those farms, somebody's working off the farm. Probably most of the people are working off the farm. And I thought to myself, well, we can't say that we've got a completely successful model if only 10% of the folks are able to make a living off what they do and what they love to do. So our task at USDA is to figure out more new and better markets. So that means traditionally we want to expand exports because we understand and appreciate how important exports are, and we are in fact doing that. We had a record export year last year, a record export this year. But we can't just depend on that. We've got to have that local and regional food system market opportunity. We have to have the organic value-added proposition that adds value, that is another way of a better market. We have to have more competition and capacity, farmer-owned processing capacity, so farmers profit not only from the production but also the processing. We need to expand renewable fuels and renewable energy, and we need to figure out ways to reduce costs for farmers. I mean, so all of that is going on at USDA, and everything we're doing in this space, including this, because this not only provides it not only increases potential productivity and the value of your capacity of your farm, but it also allows you potentially to qualify for inset credits or carbon credits or ecosystem service credits. There are some who believe that, gosh, I'm going to lose my notes here. There are some who believe that there's a 400% increase in the value of the ecosystem services that farmers are currently doing that they're not reaping the benefit of. 400% increase. Now, I don't know, that would probably make a big difference in terms of a lot of farm income. So what we want to do is figure out, okay, how do we maximize that? And I think there are multiple strategies, and we can't just latch on one. We got to do them all. And I think this administration is committed with the resources that we have, is committed to doing them all, and hopefully figuring out what works. All right. Okay, I think I've been given the sign and the signal that our time on the panel is up. I want to thank the folks for participating today in this panel. I want to thank you all for coming, and again, I want to thank you folks for giving us an opportunity to be here on your farm. It's a beautiful place and a beautiful day in a beautiful part of the country. So thank you all.